Meet Dr. Izabella Wentz. She struggled for 10 years with mysterious symptoms that were progressively getting worse until she was finally diagnosed with one of the most common diseases in America. And in traditional medicine, there's no cure for this debilitating condition, but she found a way to reverse this disease and put it completely into remission.
Gosh, I think it was in my freshman year of undergrad, and I started with like this awful fatigue. I remember one day when I came back from class, it was 3 o'clock, and I had an exam the next morning at 7:30, and I was like, I'm just gonna take a nap and then wake up and study. Well, instead of sleeping for an hour, I woke up the next morning at 8 a.m. and I was late to my final exam and I hadn't even studied for it. So this was like, oh my goodness, like where is this coming from? I went home for that summer and I remember I'd go to bed at 9 p.m. just fully exhausted, and then I would be woken up by my mom at 3 p.m. the next day when she would get home from work. And I would just be constantly exhausted. I had a really hard time with making decisions and felt depressed. Having every year was like more and more symptoms. And then I ended up with allergies to like everything. I had acid reflux, a chronic cough, irritable bowel syndrome, bloating, carpal tunnel in both arms, anxiety and panic attacks. Like this was my everyday life. There was some feedback I got from other people that I was like lazy. And I really started to believe that. And then, you know, just maybe that like I'm not really meant to accomplish anything. And I would go to different doctors and say, I'm so tired. And they would say, everybody's tired.
But she knew that there was something that was not right. So she had to start advocating for herself and push to get more testing done.
I ended up with doing like GI endoscopy. I had a cardiologist look at my heart because I had some palpitations. I had a dermatologist that I consulted with and an allergist, immunologist. And finally, the allergist, immunologist found that I had like really high thyroid antibodies. They were in the 2000 plus range. And then I was found to have subclinical hypothyroidism.
Thyroid antibodies confirmed that she in fact did have the condition called hashimotos, which is an autoimmune condition where your immune system attacks your thyroid. About 14 million people suffer every year with hashimotos, myself included. A few years back, I got COVID and it triggered this condition, and it completely turned my life upside down, and I've been putting the pieces back ever since. If you want to learn more about my story, I'll put a video up here for you to go watch afterwards or down in the description that goes in depth into the journey that I went on and the one that I continue to be on. So to say that I was excited to talk to Izabella about how she beat this condition would definitely be an understatement.
I just remember coming home and telling my husband that I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's and how devastated I was, and I just was crying, and I called my mom crying, and my mom said, I wish I could take this disease from you and just have it myself. And yeah, it was a really tough time because I just felt like, wow, like what did I do to deserve this, and what had I done in my life? I mean, I was a healthcare professional by that point. I had my doctorate degree in pharmacy, and I thought I knew everything there was to know about being healthy. I was eating whole wheat and low-fat dairy and exercising 5 days a week, and yet my body was like failing me. It was quite devastating. You kind of feel conflicted because some people are telling you it's not a big deal and you shouldn't be upset about this, but it's like, it really was a big deal to me. So being a pharmacist, I was like, okay, I have a thyroid condition, there's thyroid meds, amazing, I'm gonna feel so much better. And I remember looking through the lecture notes when I was diagnosed. At that point, I was freshly out of pharmacy school. And I remember seeing that it was an autoimmune condition. And then I was like, okay, what are the lifestyle things? And it just says, there's really no lifestyle recommendations for it. You just take meds. And I'm like, that can't be.
Yeah.
And that just didn't make sense. And in my brain, I was like, well, there's gotta be a reason. Why do I have it now when other people get it later? And there was like this really big disconnect for me. And at that point, I was like really determined to figure out if there were any lifestyle things that could have contributed to me developing the condition. Part of me was like, I wonder if I could find what caused this. So I sort of set out on this journey to learn more, looking at the published medical research, looking at patient forums, also looking at anything I could find on the topic. And that was like how my journey began in getting myself well. It actually took like 3 years of like research to actually feel like I got to the point where I was in remission and all of my symptoms vanished.
What's the story that you told yourself to keep yourself motivated as you were kind of going through this? Because I imagine it wasn't a straight line.
2011, we moved back to Chicago for my husband's job where I'm from. I was working in pharmaceutical sales, which was like my dream job at the time. And I got this amazing gig in Chicago, right? I just really had to work on my mindset. And I think part of that job, just constantly being rejected and having doors shut in my face, also helped. And I remember I would wake up in the morning and I would look in the mirror and I would say, I'm Izabella Wentz, I'm in charge of my own destiny.
Oof.
And I would keep saying that until I believed it, right?
Wow.
What's crazy about this is if you watch the last video that I did with Chase Hughes about how to brainwash yourself to be healthy, he talks about this very same concept and how this is the most important thing that anyone can do to achieve any health outcome is to have this worldview of I'm in control. And here is Izabella essentially saying the same exact thing. So if you haven't watched that video, then go check it out after you're done with this one. I'll put a link up here and down in the description as well.
Part of my travels is I got to visit some amazing compounding pharmacies. And I remember being like, here's my drug, you should tell more patients to take it. And there was this one compounding pharmacist in the suburbs of Chicago who was like, oh, for asthma, did you know that fish oils work for asthma really well? And did you know that probiotics work for asthma really well? I swear to God, I like walked into that pharmacy to sell him a bunch of meds, right? And I walked out with a whole bunch of probiotics and fish oils.
Sold you a bunch of supplements.
Absolutely. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's like this whole body of knowledge that I hadn't tapped into. I was exhausted, I was fatigued, I was, putting on a brave face to do my job, of course.
Yeah.
But I'm showing up at all of these healthcare professionals and talking to them about drugs, and I got to cover like a huge part of Chicagoland. So I talked to a few hundred people and I was able to seek out some doctors in integrative medicine that further helped me. One doctor told me about food sensitivity testing and I ended up figuring out that I was gluten and dairy sensitive. And so 3 days going gluten-free and dairy-free, acid reflux gone, IBS gone. The carpal tunnel was gone 2 weeks later. And it's not like all of my symptoms went away overnight. Like I still had like anxiety and fatigue, but I was like, I'm peeling back the layers of the onion.
So you basically had Hashimoto's for a decade, probably subclinical for a while. Once you found it, you're kind of set on this journey. And then on this journey of navigating the healthcare landscape, you're picking up these breadcrumbs, trying different things, and it's working. And you're starting to feel better. So then what happened next?
At some point I transitioned into working into public health. And at that point I learned about like root cause analysis and what they use for healthcare systems, like trying to figure out like, well, what is the actual problem? These are the symptoms. And I was like, oh my gosh, that could be applied to the body.
Yeah.
And so I built this process map and flow chart of like, okay, acid reflux, what is this caused by? And IBS, what is this caused by? And then I listed out like all of my symptoms and all of the things, and I figured out how to connect them all. At a certain point, I had eliminated gluten and dairy, and I saw so much progress from that. In my mind, I was like, it's gotta be food, but maybe there's more food. And so I got down the slippery slope of just eliminating more and more and more foods. And then I just got very, very thin.
But unfortunately, her journey wasn't perfect and she didn't keep getting better and better and better.
I remember going to a wedding for a family member where they said I was anorexic. And they said that I had an eating disorder. And it was like very frustrating to me too, because it's like, if I looked amazing, if I felt amazing, then it wouldn't have been so hurtful to people making comments about my diet. But like, I still felt like crap. So I was like the healthiest sick person, right? I looked bad. Like, I mean, my skin was like super broken out. I was in this gorgeous dress, but like my rib bones were showing here. I looked very thin, right?
Yeah.
And people had accused me of having an eating disorder and I had like little bald spots. And I thought like, that was kind of devastating because I was like, oh man, like I'm trying so hard. And I thought this was working, but at a certain point, it's like, and I was losing more foods and the bloating was starting to come back. You start to doubt yourself.
What's the story you told yourself then?
I was like very much, it felt like me against the world, right? And I kind of withdrew. And so I just kind of shut down for a while and I kind of got back into my like cave and started to do more research. Then I started coming across like, okay, so why are you sensitive to so many different foods, right? And I started doing some more functional medicine training. And then I learned about like gut testing. And that showed I had a protozoa called Blastocystis hominis. And that protozoa actually can make you sensitive to a ton of foods. It can cause irritable bowel syndrome. It could cause chronic hives. It's also been shown to be a cause of Hashimoto's. Eradicating it can get people into remission.
So the gut plays a huge role in Hashimoto's and every autoimmune condition. And on my quest to find the best products for myself, I stumbled upon this company called healthygut.com. And I've been taking their supplements for the last 6 months, and it's made a really big difference for me. And ironically, Izabella was actually friends with the founders of this company. So they became the the sponsor of this video. I had a great experience taking their tributyrin product, which is a butyrate therapy, which has been shown to be more effective than most probiotics when it comes to healing the gut. I have literally never seen a supplement company with such amazing reviews. And I think it's because they're so focused on the product, not the marketing. And I tend to think that usually the best products have the worst marketing. So I'm super excited to be giving them a platform. The founders really want to see people feel well because they too struggled with their own gut issues for years. In fact, there was a time when Steven, one of the founders, was going to the bathroom 8 to 9 times a day. So this company was really birthed out of pain to help solve their own problems. And now they have an incredibly powerful and science-backed product catalog, which helps people reverse their gut issues and get their life back. They really know what it feels like to be struggling with these types of issues, and they can help you tailor an approach that will support your specific situation. And they have a team of extremely knowledgeable functional practitioners. When you reach out to customer support, those are the people who are answering your questions, and they'll help guide you to find the right product for you. And then once you get the product, they'll do a free consult with you to make sure that the dosage is right and that you follow a protocol that's going to be appropriate for you. And there's no weirdness on the call where they're trying to pressure you into doing anything. It's really just there so that you can get help from a real person who has experience helping people reverse their gut problems. This is completely unheard of in the supplement space, and that's exactly why I decided to partner with them on this video. And I really just can't speak highly enough of them. And that means a lot coming from me because I've spent over $250,000 on my own personal health. So I've been around the block a few times and I know what else is out there. So if you want to start improving your gut health right now, click the link in the description, use the code, save yourself some money on the products, get help, and start feeling better now. All right, let's get back to Izabella's story. As she continued to learn, she started to discover more and more pieces to the puzzle that started to help her feel better. But even as she was able to get her thyroid antibodies into remission levels, she still had more setbacks.
I went to London and I bought this beautiful makeup and I was like putting on this lip gloss every single day. I was working with people with thyroid issues. I was really starting my website and advocating. I created a Hashimoto's summit and just really trying to get the word out there that people can get better. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I have tingling in my arms, starting to get that hair loss again, started to have some of my symptoms creep back up, and I ended up doing a test that showed I had arsenic toxicity. And I didn't know where it came from. And of course, being a researcher, I put on my research hat and it turned out I was like poisoning myself with my personal care products.
By the way, me and my team screened hundreds of products that we put into our non-toxic database, which you can get totally for free. And I'll put the link down in the description and in the first comment. Or you can go to wellnessdaddy.com/database and you can get it there. And after eliminating all those toxins, she was able to get back into remission again.
It's like I was doing the impossible because, I mean, my training as a conventionally trained pharmacist, you have a disease, here's drugs, right?
Yeah.
And there was no like talk about like you can actually get into remission. So I was like, I'm doing the impossible. People need to know.
You know, as someone goes through this process, there's a huge emotional component. What are some of the beliefs and psychological shifts that you had to make in order to get yourself to a place where you could be there? Because the version of you who had all these issues is a much different version than the one that's in remission.
At one part, I would say, you know, the old me's dead and gone. Like, and I think that was, I don't know if it's like such a beautiful positive statement, but really that's what happened. Was there was a new version of me, and some of the things that were a part of the old me were just no longer going to work in my new life and my new healthy identity. Some of the patterns and behaviors and beliefs I had. So one of them would be having unsupportive friends or people in my life that I was using my energy on, that perhaps the feeling wasn't mutual, that I was showing up for them, they weren't showing up for me. That was no longer okay for me. So definitely setting more boundaries of what I was willing to do.
What are some of the beliefs that you have now that currently allow you to maintain that?
I think some of the beliefs that transform would be like, I'm only valuable if I'm productive, right? Like, you do not need to work for your rest. Like, you can just rest. You deserve rest because you're human.
One of the biggest factors that can keep people sick is their beliefs and unresolved trauma. So I really wanted to understand how Izabella approached the emotional side of things to get better.
So I have done a lot of EMDR, I would say hundreds of sessions, and I've done a lot of neurofeedback, as well as like this amazing book called The Warrior Goddess, just like a workbook that you go through and you really work to shift some of those beliefs that no longer work for you. I mean, this has been an ongoing process, so I was all caught up. I think I did 4 hours of EMDR every week when I was like really trying to shift my patterns. I'm just like really proud of who I am now. now and the journey that I've been on, I don't know, I just feel comfortable in my own skin. EMDR and neurofeedback has really shifted that for me, just like really getting comfortable being myself.
Izabella has over 1 million followers across all of her different platforms, and she's sold hundreds of thousands of copies of her book, and over 15,000 people have gone through her paid programs. So I think it's fair to say that she's helped more people with Hashimoto's and thyroid issues than anyone else on the planet. So I wanted to know, what are the patterns that she's seen amongst the people who have gotten into remission and have stayed there?
One of the things is that they tend to be empowered. And so rather than feeling like a victim of circumstance, they ask themselves the question of what can I do to take charge of my health and to get myself better. And that's gonna be a really, really big difference for people, is that mindset and wanting to be coming from an empowered place versus some of the people that maybe outsource their healing. A lot of times people come to me and like, where can I find a doctor that can heal me? And my big transformation that I hope to give to people is, what can I do to heal myself? Yes, you might have to find a doctor to do tests for you and to prescribe medications or various therapies, but at the end of the day, you are you. You're in charge of your own health. Like, I can tell you what diet you need to eat. I could tell you what supplements to take. I can give you tests to do, but if you don't make those steps in your day-to-day life, if you don't take charge of your own health, if you're not like empowered and bought in, then you're not gonna get better. And it's also people that are very open-minded and people that aren't dogmatic. I know some people get in a dogma of like, I will never take medications. And I think that's a dangerous place to be, because if your thyroid gland is severely damaged, like you need to get on thyroid medications, right? And also people that can connect with their bodies. I'm a big fan of avocados and like coconut milk, but there are some people that are sensitive to them. And just because I say that they're great foods to include in your thyroid healing diet and they make you throw up, like do not like force feed yourself with these things. And some people are like, so-and-so says this is really good, but I feel really bad with it. And they keep doing it.
And this conversation led us to the power of the mind and why it's so important to control your thoughts.
Our thoughts can absolutely communicate to the rest of our bodies. If my brain is stressed, guess what? I'm gonna be waking up at 3 a.m. and not being able to sleep. And then what does that mean? That means I'm exhausted the next day. My body didn't have a chance to heal. My brain didn't have a chance to heal overnight. I was actually living in Amsterdam at the time, and one of our friends was Melanie Roche, who was an intuitive spiritual healer. And one of the things she said to me, and I'm getting the chills right now, she said, everybody that I work with autoimmune disease, they just say the unkindest things to themselves. And for me, that was kind of a big aha moment and transformation, because I was like, I do that. I'm so hard on myself, right? It's like you internalize those messages that you get maybe from the outside world of like, oh, you're so lazy or whatever. I really started to make a conscious effort of just being kinder to myself.
Beneath everything, there is always a core story that drives everything in our life. Regardless of what happens to us, whether it's good or bad, this life script determines how we perceive what happens to us and then what we do about it. And I asked Izabella, what is her core story now that she's better?
I am the canvas, the paint, and the painter, and I really am in charge of my own destiny.
What made this transformation possible for Izabella were these 7 things. Number 1 was she adopted this worldview of I'm in control and I will do relentless research until I find out why I developed this condition. Number 2 is doing the right testing and identifying what are the actual root causes. Number 3 is addressing those triggers one by one with the appropriate protocol and supplements. Number 4 is adjusting her nutrition and using food as medicine. Number 5 is holistically supporting all the different systems of the body as she goes through this process, like the adrenals and the liver. Number 6 is removing the toxins from her environment and all of her personal care products. And number 7 is doing lots of therapy and neurofeedback to change her patterns and belief systems. After spending some time with Izabella, I was reminded of one of the most important lessons, and that is that whatever health thing that you're dealing with, there is someone out there who has figured it out. And then your job becomes then to go and find that person who's already walked the path and learn from them. And this is a condition that all the doctors said was completely incurable, and there's nothing you can really do about it except for getting on medication. And I think Izabella's story gives us all hope that miracles really are real. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you like this video. I know you're gonna like this video right here that I did with Chase Hughes. That's gonna help you shift your identity into who you need to become in order to achieve that health goal. So go ahead and watch that video right now. I put a lot of work into it. I know you're gonna love it. Take care, be well.